Hey there, you are either watching or listening to The Climb. The Climb is brought to you by the Digital Mastermind. The Digital Mastermind is the group for agency owners, technologists, and marketers that want to up their game. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and shoot me an email, Jon, Jon, at digitalmastermind.com, or visit us on the website tied to that email, and let's have a conversation and see if you're a good fit. Today, we have a fantastic episode. We have a DMG member by the name of Eric Berman from Branditize. They're an agency out of San Diego. We talk about all types of stuff, some of the challenges that he got into. And then one of those challenges that really stood out to me and may stand out to you as well is he created the precursor to Facebook. And he talks all about those failures. But before we get into that, Dave, why don't you come out here?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good, man. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Color. So coming up with something, and granted, he didn't know, like, I'm sure how big Facebook would be, but when you have an idea that is just like that, like sexy, like this is going to be the next greatest thing. Like, have you ever had one of those?
You know, in prep for the show we were talking about, I've never had anything that I thought would get that big. You know, I've had plenty of ideas that I've really liked. Like, you know, one of the things I always talk about is I had the #1 Warcraft ranking system when I was like 16 years old. At 15, I had the #1 Alien versus Predator website on the internet on GeoCities. You know, and then you know, podcasting. I was at the forefront of podcasting with a website called Vital Podcast, and this is before Apple started listing podcasts, before they thought it was anything. And I was creating a catalog of all the podcasts that were out there independently, and I had to work with these podcasters and develop a personal relationship, get them listed. They'd have me on their shows. You know, it was fun, but I mean, the second Apple listed it or started listing podcasts, I was like, all right, this is a waste of my time. I'm never going to be able to compete with Apple. So I've always had ideas, but then I've always kind of felt like, you know, why waste your time when these big companies are just going to come in and swoop in and take your market share.
I think I like have just a love for it, right? Everybody talks about the why, that purpose, that mission, and just have something where you believe yours is better than theirs. And granted, going up against Apple, I mean, that's hard, right? It's like, all right, let's be realistic here.
But you know, the only thing I've been passionate about is Oyova. You know, building this company. I don't want it to be $100 or $1 billion company. Like that seems stressful. It's like that song, Simple Man. I just want to be a simple man.
Really? That's written up there by you in Jacksonville. That's Leonard Skinner, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. I love ideas, right? And there's this high that I get when I have one where I just like, oh, this is going to be $1 billion idea. I don't go screaming on the mountaintops, but there's this feeling I get just like, oh, and even working with clients' business, when I can see that to me is like a drug, and it's very addicting.
Oh,
so I love that. And that's one of the things I love about this industry, because that's around the corner at any time. Anytime anybody gets down on themselves or pessimistic, I'm like, you have no idea. Like, literally, the best idea could be right around the corner, something you get to work on, or people you get to work with, or in a company you get attached to that just explodes into something.
My favorite aspect of what we do is learning new business models from our clients. It's the most intriguing aspect, like digging into how do they plan on making money?
Yeah.
You know, a lot of them are simple. I'm going to make a product. I'm going to sell a product. Okay. We all know that. That's e-commerce, blah. But it's the really unique ones that really it's just super interesting.
I agree. And what I love is where it appears on the outset that somebody's doing it exactly like everybody else. And then you dig into their business and they're like, but this is why we're different. And they show you something and you're like, and it's like a total game changer from either a profitability or a stickiness component. And you're just watching everybody else play catch up. Like, I absolutely love that shit.
And I love the clients that understand the rules so well that they know how to circumvent them. Like, we have a client that if they weren't set up as a membership, a private membership, then they would have to apply to all these other regulations because it has to deal with I think it's firearms. And the fact that they just knew how to navigate so that they didn't have to apply to all that regulation, I was like, that's genius. I love hearing that.
That reminds me of the mob when they try to get, like, you know, the cops would try to go into one of their places like, no, this is a private club. You're not allowed in here.
Right. I went to a bachelor party in Philadelphia, and I think the bars close at like 2 a.m. And so 2 a.m. hits. We're like, oh man, this is like 25 guys, and we're all having a blast. And the guy that lived there was like, no, we can go to a private club. The second you deem yourself a private club, all those laws don't apply to you anymore. Yep. So we all had to sit there and sign up and pay a $5 membership fee, and now we're members. And then we got to hang out as long as we wanted. I was like, genius.
Loopholes, man.
Yeah.
They used to have. Do they ever have bottle clubs by you? They used to have bottle clubs down here. I don't think they have those anymore.
I've never heard of it.
So, like the seediest places, right? So after bars would close, you would go to a bottle club, and that's where you bought a bottle from, I think, their liquor store. I can't remember, or you brought in your own, and you gave it to them. They would put it behind their counter, and then they would pour you drinks. And it was literally just a bar setting where you just brought in your own alcohol and put it.
I would love that. Just your own.
You would not love the people that showed up to these things. I'm sure. It was like two mixes of people, right? And it was just like, all right, people that just wanted to get rowdy and raucous and, wear an Affliction shirt and start a fight in the parking lot, and then everybody else.
Well, I mean, it's like a VFW, a Knights of Columbus, a Lions Club, the Moose Lodge. Like, all those are private clubs, and they all have their, I actually looked into, I don't know, we're getting off on a tangent, but I love the idea of a private club. I want to start my own private club. I mean, you think of a country club as a private club. There's actually lots of examples of the public's not allowed. So,
and I think the thing that, we could kind of put a pin on it, spin it back, is the thing that's with a private club, though, that dictates what'll happen is like your insurance policies.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because like there's certain things that you can't do at certain times, and age limits and all that based on your private club, because it's just going to put you in a precarious situation.
Mm-hmm.
And bringing this all the way back, have you had an idea though that you believed in that just failed, that just you were eclipsed by, or would that just fall into that podcast piece we were talking about?
Yeah, the podcast piece. I mean, there's a lot of little projects I've worked on. Like, I created a video game that was, back in the day, you used to be able to launch apps on Facebook, and you were in the Facebook, ecosystem. I don't even think they even allow that anymore. But it was a really fun
like farming game and all those others. I didn't play from. Yeah, I remember you talking about.
So I created a game called Political Reign, REIGN, and it was all about your sphere of influence. You could only attack people within your range. And so, and then, it was kind of a forever playing game. And I mean, at its peak, it had 250 active players. That's a failure. That's too small. But the people that played it loved it. And it was super fun to just hear that feedback and make a game, So I was able to say I made a video game. So an online multiplayer game. But it didn't go anywhere. I mean, a lot of my side projects didn't go anywhere. And the successful ones are why Oyuva's here today. Seriously, like, I started putting my energy into other people's projects, and as they succeeded, I mean, it established the fact that we could do this for other people professionally.
Yeah, I think as far as side projects are concerned, I got a whole. I now it takes a lot for me to get interested in a side project, and by a lot, I mean there actually has to be money, like right there. But yeah, I mean, we created one for like Wi-Fi. I remember that we were literally ahead of the curve. We're creating like grids and whatnot, and we were going to sync that up, where now you go to a lot of places and you get your email address to sign up. So we got a few restaurants to do that, and a few bars. It was just so much work in getting these places to sign up. That was something that we learned. And granted, you're just learning business as you go. It's like, okay, this is not something that we accounted for. Well, who's going to do that? It's like, well, we're busy with other occupations. And yeah, there's just a list of like other little things, like creating a community. So here in the St. Pete area, it was like Tampete. So we were going to create this combination between Tampete and like work on a community and do like all the branding for it. And we got involved with some like city officials and some of the others. And then you just realize like, wow, this sucks. There's like a lot of work. There's a lot of shit in here I don't want to do. And then you're the emotional driver for this, and you're having to continually carry the torch. So yeah, I've had just so many that sunset. And I think the way to put a stop on it though is anymore, I look at the energy that it's going to take from me. Like, what is the possible outcome? And I think that's why some people just don't have as many things as they get older. You just mature.
Yeah. So one of the projects that it's not my idea, but I bought into it and became a driver of it. And so many young developers fall for this trap. And it's, if we can take this moment to educate them. There was a project called Property Cube. And the idea was a social network wrapped around your real estate search. And so the idea I thought was like, oh, this is kind of really good idea. Like when you're searching for a new home, you want to share it with friends. You want their opinions on it. You want them to rate it. And so we built out this social network around real estate. And, but I did it for equity, no money. And from the founders, let me make sure I get the air quotes. From the founders, all they kept saying is the reason why we're not successful is because you haven't gotten these features done yet. That was always the response, which meant they didn't have to work harder. They didn't have to put more money into it. They didn't have to put more energy into it. I just needed to work harder. So I got onto that after about a year and a half, trying to work a side gig, trying to do something big. And I was like, nah, I'm out.
Yep.
And it quickly folded, without free energy. It folded.
Once you find yourself in the hole, stop digging.
Yeah. And so to your point about the energy, it is, it could be exhausting. And that's why the truly big, the Facebooks, the Twitters, that's got to be a passion play. And you have to put your all in it if you want it to get there.
I agree. I think passion play plus movement. You have to create the movement.
One other thing. And so this, I think your story reminded me of it. I will never get into a business model where a big component of what I have to do is educate the customer of what it is we do.
Yeah, I agree.
I had a client that his customer had no clue the value of his product. And he still grew it and he still sold it. I mean, it's still, it's a 10-year company that he sold to another business. But God, so much effort went into simply educating the customer of why they need this thing.
Yeah, we'll even clients will come on board today just along that line, and or we'll speak to them, prospects. Like when you say clients, and then we look at like, hey, the educational hurdle here is entirely too expensive based on the budget that you have. That's something that you just have to. It's not just build it and then hope everybody comes. Like there really has to be a connection. You have to build it. You have to have a huge budget to market it. And you better hope your clients can grasp it really quick. Yeah, that's the thing. Does anybody need this? Well, they said, all right, well, this is going to be really expensive if nobody needs this. Or you're just, even on the luxury side, you have to prove to everybody that this is luxury. It's just like Louis Vuitton and Prada and all these products or all these designers, they just didn't come out after night. Granted, they're the high quality that's there, but these are some of these 100-year-old companies. That I look at Tom Ford. And he's dude, that style though, that sells itself, man. That guy, but he manufactured that. He came out of nowhere, and he paid Jay-Z to talk to make a rap about Tom Ford, and all of a sudden he's directing movies. He's got sunglasses. He's got clothing. Before that, though, like if you compare, we're totally getting off tangent here, but I love it. That's part of the show. That guy's style is he's a total tastemaker. Like literally. Yeah, men's clothes. Like you look at his tux compared to anybody else's, and I've fallen for it. It's like that's the tux I want. They're like, yeah, that's $8,000. Like, okay, never mind. What else? What else you got? Like, it's just the guy creates beautiful stuff. Sunglasses. But 15 years ago, nobody heard of him. That's what I'm saying. He just like. I think he was famous before Jay-Z. Yeah, I've never heard of him before that Jay-Z song. But but see, I guess the different markets, right? I think that's what led you to them. And I think just some of the other sunglasses is what led me to Tom Ford. Yeah, because he makes gnarly styled sunglasses. But I was just what made me think of it is I was going through Netflix looking for movies, and I'm like, directed by Tom Ford. Like, can this guy do? Is he going to get into marketing or agency work now? What can this guy do? Everything. I feel like I'm defending him now, but he's a creative director, right? So I think he's just looking at it across different mediums. So if he can do it in one milieu, why couldn't he do it in another? And I didn't. So his first movie did really well, if I recall, but I don't think his second one did too well. So who knows? I think it flopped so hard he might be done with it.
So bringing it back to Eric, I know we're running and we should be hitting the interview real quick, but so he tried to do a social network.
Yeah, amongst a ton
Facebook.
of other things. It's a great episode.
But even Google tried to create a social network to go against Facebook multiple times and fell on their face. They threw billions of dollars at, like, they had a social network called like Oku. They had the Google Plus. I mean, they've literally thrown 3 social networks to try to compete against Facebook and failed.
The crazy thing, though, is that he was the precursor, and it's just like he missed timing by, I don't remember how much, but yeah, he just missed it. Like, there's so many parallels and similarities to exactly what he had done, based on what Facebook was doing. So some of those things just sting. And that's what the show is about. Successes, the failures. So you don't have to live them for yourself, but you get to be entertained and learn from them. So go ahead and check out this episode of Eric Berman from Branditize. And after you listen or during your listening, go ahead and like, share, comment, send it to somebody, or go ahead and give me your comments and feedback if you like. Jon at digitalmastermind.com. That's Jon at digitalmastermind.com.
Well,
Eric, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good to see you.
Yeah, likewise, man. So I'd like to start with your climb, your journey. How did you get here?
Well, it's quite an interesting journey. So I'm going to take you back to UCSD, where I graduated, UC San Diego. And right out of college, it's funny because I was a business degree, quantitative economics, I guess management science degree. It seemed like a lot of people in my degree went off and got their financial jobs at financial institutions or other jobs getting recruited. And I just didn't have that desire to do that for whatever reason. So I traveled, got back, and met up with some buddies, and I asked them what they were up to, and they were building this thing. They were like, "Hey, we got this idea for how to use some technology to aggregate college students and eyeballs." And I'm like, "Wow, that sounds cool. I love the idea. Where do I sit?" They're like, "I don't know. You want to work?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Well, we don't have any money to pay." I'm like, "That's okay. I just sounds cool." So. And I'll kind of circle back on that. But the start of the climb is you don't realize as an entrepreneur, I never knew I was an entrepreneur until really that I reflect on my life and look and say, I never went into the corporate world despite getting recruited into the corporate world and having a degree that would say I do that. But I was really meant to be an entrepreneur because that's what kind of got me excited is taking an idea from scratch and then starting the journey from that. So this is now way back when I'm 21 out of school. And like I said, the idea was, how do we use this voice technology to aggregate college eyeballs? And this is now 19. I'm going to date myself here. Yes, I'm almost 50. This was 93. And that led to about 3-4 of us bootstrapping, raising money, trying to figure out how to build a company to about 10 people. I'm going to fast forward really fast because that led to just grinding, the journey of an entrepreneur, almost missing payroll. When I say 10, 15 times, that's not even an exaggeration. It might have been more. Figure out days away from figuring out how do we go out and raise more money and share the story. And a lot of it was the main founder, which is really good at sharing the vision. And along the way, I'd be wearing so many different hats and starting up a department and finding somebody else to take over and doing the next thing. Fast forward a little bit, this thing called Netscape hit. And this thing called the browser and the internet hit, and all of a sudden money was flooding into companies. So we finally got over the hurdle, survived enough to create a picture of what we were doing on the internet. And us having a hard time raising money led to a lot of money coming in. And all of a sudden, next thing you know, we're at 400 employees, raised close to $75 million, and had worked ourselves up as technology started coming and as we started going into the internet. We became what ultimately was Facebook. It's Facebook now. We were the first social media company back in now 98, 99 called collegeclub.com. And looking at statistics, this is crazy. We were the #1 site for college market. If you looked at the college eyeball, the college demographic, we were #1 on the entire internet. And we were the number 40th biggest site in all the internet. Doing really a lot of what Facebook does today in a sort of different capacity. Crazy journey climbing up that mountain. like I said, almost missing payroll, to raising capital, to hiring and firing, to acquiring 4 companies and flying around the U.S. and really different globally as well, to go get money, and then the ebbs and flows of what happens when you're bringing in tens of people each week into the business. Ultimately, we sort of felt like we were about to hit the apex of the mountain, because we finally filed to go public. So here I am at 27 years old now, 7 years later, 28 years old, taking our first vacation in 5 years. Oh, by the way, back to my other story, I didn't get paid for the first 18 months. Typical entrepreneur said, I'm just going to go sweat equity as long as I can and milk every dollar I saved up in college. Finally got paid and was making $1,200 a month for a while, and I thought I was rich. So here we are. We're finally taking our first vacation in 5 years, filed to go public, put the SEC filings out there. So excited. Could never forget the day we were in Playa del Carmen, Mexico, and it was a very, very rainy, torrential downpour. I was there with the CEO, the CFO, and others, and on the news, we're watching the big, giant first bubble crash meltdown of the internet, April 2000. Crazy time. Our CFO almost had a heart attack in the spot. He had to fly back instantly because we had a $10 million bridge loan coming in that Tuesday to bridge us to the IPO. So we needed to ensure we got that money because we're burning like $1.5 million, $2 million a month. Whoa. Back in that day, that's so crazy to think about that now. Back in that day, they didn't care about profits. It was venture capitalists and money. It was eyeballs. Get traffic, be the leader. The money will come later. So that's what we did. At the rate of, $1.5 million to $2 million burn. So we get back, and all of a sudden the doors got slammed shut on us from the investors that were put the money in, because they said, well, we got to see what the correction is. Everybody was spooked. Everything just dried up for a while. And I don't know if you remember all that. I don't remember you remember that far back what you were doing at that time, probably something similar. But it was just like panic mode. Well, what do we do? I mean, you have 400 people, board meetings like crazy. And next thing you know, we're having to lay off like you wouldn't believe just to survive. And then I learned some hard lessons. We learned some hard lessons about board control and the importance as you're building up companies about having board control. And if you give up board control, you could lose everything, no matter what, even if you have more shares, if you own more shares. Never would have known that in hindsight. So ultimately, the board wanted to essentially, as the market wasn't coming back for a while, we were going to probably go out at anywhere from $500 million to $1 billion IPO down to like peanuts, and we were losing everything. And they just wanted to shed cost, shed employees, and just basically sell off anything they could get for the company, which was totally against what the founders we wanted to do. We worked, I'm not kidding. It was like 7 days a week, 10 hours a day. We'd have mattresses in the, typical internet thing, mattresses in the company, sleep there all the time. I had no life. This was everything. And for them to sort of just say, well, we're just going to dump this whole thing. That was just a massive, talk about a valley. We were at the peak and we just fell fast and hard. Very, very difficult time of my life to go through that. I thought I was done. I thought I was retired, and just lost it all.
Oh, man.
Through that.
Yeah.
So then the battle was, how do we get this company out of, they wanted to take it through what's called a 363 bankruptcy, which is what, you learn these things, right? At 27, 28, you would never think you'd learn these things. What's a 363 bankruptcy? Well, it's when they basically say, we're going to wipe out all the debt, just keep the assets and have somebody start fresh with the company. And so we then try to go buy it out of bankruptcy with me and the a couple of the founders, and we were just another journey, just try to call and find people and get investors. Finally had an investor lined up that we thought we were going to win this company, and then his wife had a stroke like the week that we were supposed to go to the courts to try to win the battle, and I was like, okay, this journey is now ended. This part of our life, and man, it was a roller coaster. What I like to tell people is it's a lot harder. It's a lot easier to lose money when you didn't have much and was on paper than me having had millions and millions of dollars. I've been retired, with well into $10 to $20 million plus, vanished. So,
yeah, you're not going to miss what you've never had.
Never, yeah. So I just babbled a lot there, but I'd say that was the first part of the climb right there.
So, all right, there's a lot to unpack there, and I definitely want to get into some other things. I like how we've started with this, the this huge peak and valley that you've overcame. So first question is, what was your function in this? Like, what did you do as a part of this piece?
Yeah. So again, I didn't really know what I was, right? 21 out of school, I'm just a hustler and a grinder. Over time I could look back and ultimately one of the things I learned a lot from the original founder, his name was Michael. One of the things he taught me was to rethink the way corporate structure was. A lot of times the corporate model was you build up a division and you have to create your own fiefdom and you create your own system so you can't be replaced. And so you never want anybody to go past you because you're worried about job security. Mm-hmm. He undid that whole thinking through the whole company. It was the opposite. Your job is to build up a department and then replace yourself with somebody better. So, build as much system as you can, find somebody else to come in that really loves that's better than you. And then you can go start something else because your ultimate job security is you're so good. You could go back into that department and cover it if you had to, but you could go just do it again because there's always another need to go do something if you have that skill set. So in hindsight, I was out there doing business development, sales, corporate development, project management, like everything, in hindsight, probably everything other than running the tech team. I was doing ops, you name it. And
how did he do that though?
How do you mean?
How did he instill that? That's a very important part of culture right there. Like, how did he do that?
I think that was just for, he just had some experience. He was, about 5 years older and just had some experience in running other businesses as well. One of the things that, and this is actually, I'm going to kind of create an open loop here. One of the things we did early on, which is really a passion I would have if my rocking chair in the future, if I retire and want to give back, it's teaching people life skills that you don't learn in college. So what we did, because he was a big fan of people like Brian Tracy and Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
So we used to lock ourselves. I remember this, vividly, me, 15, 20 of us, 6 a.m. was breakfast with Brian and Tony. And if you're late, you go on the breakfast board and you get to bring breakfast for everybody, right? So from 6 to 7, we would be out there listening and learning from Brian and Tony. And you're learning life skills. You're learning about how to build companies and time management, goal setting, selling, how to build teams, all that kind of stuff. And through a lot of these philosophies, he learned a lot of that stuff and others. And we just taught that. I think when you're a kid coming out of college, you're very moldable. What the hell do I know? And this is what he's teaching me. So I kind of learned some good cultural tips I look back on, and which is also why I look back on this part of the journey and say, you know what, I might have lost the retirement, but I can't take away the amazing experience of what I learned, hands-on MBA, real lifestyle here. When you're running a company, who gets to run a company of 400 people at 27, 28 years old, who gets to raise millions of dollars, who gets to, hire and fire senior talent and build teams and build culture and all that. So such an amazing experience. I would never trade it for anything. So that was just one of the many things that he instilled. And I took that to heart and really kind of coached others. And even today, that still now goes into my new company today. And we'll get in that a little bit, but that's part of what we teach.
Right on. So do you think Mark Zuckerberg literally knew of your company and made all the right moves because you guys made all the wrong moves?
I actually met, here's a funny side note is after we were done, my brother started an incubator with a few buddies and he had this idea and they started this little company called MySpace. So my brother was one of the 4 founders of MySpace. No, not Tom. Everybody says, was he Tom? No, he was more like the COO behind the scenes.
Tom's friends with everybody.
Tom's friends with everybody. Yeah. So there's clearly was a social media empire in the blood of the Berman brothers. So he started that. So I think Zuck probably got a lot. I know he got a lot more on MySpace. MySpace definitely probably took some elements of what we did. I certainly was, giving my brother tips along the way from what we learned. So, I'm sure I'd like to think there's a little bit of threading in there. If I ever were in a room with Mark, I don't even know if he would remember us. He might just have a laugh and say, "Oh, I kind of remember that a little bit," but this was so early on.
That's cool. Passing the torch to him. All right. Yeah. So I know we'll probably flip back because there's a ton in that you've learned there. But all right. So you crash, you burn, and then where do we go from here?
So I'll take you back to after we couldn't get the company out of bankruptcy and we just gave up. It was a pivotal point in my life where I was doing this with Michael, the CEO, and I was always kind of his right arm. It was always his thing, and I was kind of the guy there. And I think I had to make he's ready to do the next thing, and it was a tough decision because I learned so much from it. I had such loyalty, but at that point, I had to make a decision to go on my own. It was like, now it's my time. I've learned a lot. I want to start doing things my way. And like anything, like it's almost like any parent. There's a lot you take away from them that you love. There's certain things, skills that you do that you may not do if it were your company. And so I got that opportunity to just do from scratch. And I started consulting, and I had a fun project with Club Med. We all know the famous Club Med, and it was a social media version of Club Med called My Club Med. And so I found a buddy, and he and I went out there and pitched it to him and sold it. And we're doing some fun things where, we found that Club Med did a terrible job of retaining its guests and using any kind of social media to capture these relationships. You'd go away for a week and you'd meet so many people, and then everything would disappear the day you left. And I'm like, well, there's such great ways to foster that. And that was a fun little project we did with them. And then I also met through a family friend, my hero, Brian Tracy, happened to be in San Diego where I live. And a family friend said, hey, Eric, I know you know Brian and you know this internet thing. Well, he needs a website. This is 2001 now, early 2001. I said, sure, I'd love to talk to him. So I met with Brian. And I said, Brian, I'm a huge fan. I started like quoting all his stuff, and he's just like, wow, this guy is like a groupie. I was like, like salivating when I saw him and drooling. And I said, but Brian, I know what you need, and I'll tell you what, I'm an entrepreneur like you, Brian. I'll come in and do this, but don't pay me until I make you money, and then I want to earn my way to success. And when I succeed, I'll share in the profits with you.
Wow, performance based.
Eric, you're my kind of guy. And that really also is part of my philosophy, and something I like to teach, that, when you're early on and you're young and you're hungry, is that, sometimes it's as simple as just getting your foot in the door and proving yourself. If you have the confidence and know-how, and, I know people like to intern. I think interning is such a great idea for young people. It's so much of hiring, as you know, Jon, you probably do the same thing. It's like, I don't really spend too much time looking at where people went to school or this or that. I want to know what their experiences are, and who they've worked with. Yeah. And just getting those experiences, whether you have to do it for free or not, so be it. So a guy like Brian was like, what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to crush it for him, and I'm going to earn more in the long run. And, yes, I had a little bit of, was able to build up a little money in cash reserves to take on that risk. And sure enough, it didn't take that long for me to get there, to build up a business for him. So
what was that break? I want to pause there for a second. So like, yeah. you tell him, hey man, we bring you business. Did you get like an additional reward, like because of your risk in the game? Like, what did that look like?
We would eventually what he said is, I have to hire a few people to do some of like the tech stuff that I didn't have the ability to do. And we agreed on a budget for that. And, all that money would get paid back to him first. And then ultimately whatever's left over, really the net revenue of the business, we agreed to some kind of percentage. I would take a percent. He would take a percent. In fact, I think what happened was, now that I recall, is he had a much bigger piece. I had a small piece until he was paid back all the early other money, and then eventually kind of leveled down to a different number, which was, giving me more money. And then we just built from there.
So this is wildly more profitable, I'm assuming, than just going like if you were selling hours or just typical value based?
In hindsight, it was a lot more profitable when, for me, for my hours, for my time, definitely. Okay. It became more profitable. And also what happens, and we talked about this a little bit when we talk about our agencies and we get to the present, that sort of is still instilled into my business today to some degree, to a little bit. Learned a lot of ups and downs on that whole model. But, I started with that model with Brian, which is a performance-based model. I'm sort of ignorant, naive at the time. I just go in there again and just hustling and grinding. And it's not like I have a ton of expenses. He was still paying sort of anybody I paid externally, that would come out. But when it came to my pay, I didn't really know anything about charging by the hour or rates. I was just like, I want to build something. And a lot of it was also my desire to feel like I was a true partner and I owned an asset. And if I built something, I wanted to go along with it. And the other thing I noticed is it fundamentally changes the relationship with my clients. When you're paying a piece of, when you're paying a piece of the success and the profits, it feels different than, hey, let me bill you for my time. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, what am I paying for exactly? Why'd you spend these hours? And it just changes the game.
Yeah, different dynamic for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So you go from there. Sorry, I interrupted. All right, and then
then
what's next on this climb?
So that climb, that next part of the journey was a good run of another 10 plus years, just playing consultant, being with Brian, and goods and bads in that part of my journey, and what I could share. And it's hard because I feel like a lot of times life, when you go through, you look back in your life, it's the you choose your own adventure story, right? If I went down door 1 or 2, if I was more risk averse, lesser risk averse, what would life be like today? I don't know. I think ultimately, for better or for worse, I was probably a little bit more risk averse. And what I mean by that is, I kept working with Brian, and I stayed as a consultant there, not full time, probably, a few days a week, and then was kind of, playing with other projects. But the money was enough that I didn't have to go all in somewhere else. And oftentimes I had business ideas for other things, but as I learned again as an entrepreneur, you almost have to go all in into an idea. It's so hard to kind of half-ass an idea, work on it on the side a little bit. And I was never able to go all in because I was making a nice income. So it's you make decent income over here. There's enough of a carrot that I didn't want to just drop this client and this lifestyle I started to build for myself to go chase something, not making any money out of the gates. So I went down the path of staying on this land of consulting, making some money there, doing other projects. Now, people started coming to me and saying, and it was a lot more of the author speaker market, said, "Hey, I love what you're doing for Brian Tracy. Can you do that for me?" And I'm like, no. Wasn't sure if I really wanted to do that because there was other maybe shiny objects I was playing with at the time. But when I hear that enough times, you hit over the head and you say, well, wait a second, Eric, maybe there's kind of a business in here. Maybe there's something here I should be paying attention to. Yeah. There might be a market need, if people keep waving their hands at you. So the next part of the journey began where I took 2 of the people that I brought in to Brian Tracy, and we decided to partner up and say, maybe we should turn this into an agency where we do something similar. Now, the staff really was my staff, and they were employed by Brian Tracy, but I kind of ran the staff. I hired them. I managed them with my team. So then that became I like to say it was a 2-year conversation with Brian Tracy to essentially say, we're no longer having a monogamous relationship. Instead, my team is going to go cheat on you and work on other clients. How do you feel about that? And funny enough, I think I made it, I put stories in my head and made it probably worse than it was. Because at the end of the day, what Brian really cared about was us always taking care of him and not abandoning him. He didn't understand how all the mechanics of what we did. And for him to have to start over, and we built up so much trust. I mean, even today, now our relationship is 21 years. And, he calls me like one of his other kids, and he's like another father to me. I mean, he really plays that father figure, and I've learned so much of him. So we have such a good relationship, and he just didn't want to abandon that. That's what he cared about the most.
So you were talking to him for 2 years about this, or you were talking to yourself about talking to him for 2 years?
No, this was, when I say 2-year conversation, it was literally how do I approach this? I was an EO, right? I'm still an EO, entrepreneur organization.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd have presentations to my EO group. Okay, how do I bring this up to Brian? I wasn't sure. I was scared. I didn't want him to bail on us. There was so many fears, and in hindsight, it just, again, it was such a learn. There was so much I was worried about in having that conversation. I want to get it done right, the timing of it, and I didn't want him to be mad. I didn't want him to bail on us. I want him to know I care about him. And literally, from the time I thought about doing this, to when I actually executed, it was probably about 1.5 years, 2 years.
Wow!
Because of me finding the right timing on doing it, and do something we really want to do. It was just all the discussions.
What was the catalyst, though? Something had to snap or break where you're just like, okay, I got to have this conversation.
I think because once we ultimately just said we just have to do this, it was just like, okay, well, we got to move forward because now we're having actual clients that we've talked to. They're ready to get going. It was kind of at that point. Okay. Where we just needed to do it. And there's obviously the integrity I have. I don't want to just start using the staff on other people and Brian not knowing what's going on.
Yeah.
So I had to say, and so, like I said, fortunately, it wasn't a big deal. Again, Brian's just like, hey, as long as you're taking care of me and I'm your first love, and you don't abandon me. And I said, Brian, I'll never abandon you, and we'll make sure we take care of you. And that was that.
Right on.
And so that led to the next climb, really, which is probably the journey I'm on now and been on now since 2014. So 7-year journey now, this hill, which is, guess what? You're now an agency owner. Really? We all laugh, and I'm sure you've talked about that. Do we all grow up as entrepreneurs wanting to own agencies? I don't know if that was necessarily what we had in mind. I don't know if this is the torture we decided amongst ourselves, but we somehow got here.
Yeah. And then tell about your agency now. All right. So and do you specialize in these speakers?
Yeah, so this climb was really discovery, and you know, you and I've talked about this recently. You're still learning almost every day about like what's the next thing and the next hurdle. So I would say the first few years is what do we want to be when we grow up? You know, we certainly thought we were author, speaker space, the thought leaders as you look back. You know, now the word influencer is so big, but you know, the influencers back in that day was, you know, your authors and speakers that were selling audio cassettes, and eventually YouTube started coming around. And we found others. Now we were in hindsight pretty ignorant and bullish that back to that performance model. We're like, this is going to be great. Let's go talk to the next author speaker who comes to us. And of course, back then it was yes to everybody. Oh my God, they're talking to us. They're interested. Yes, they like us. Sure, let's see what we could do. And so the offering would be, you know, let's say it was you, John. We'd be like, sure, John. Why don't you? I see you have this book and your content. Come work for us. We're going to do all this work and don't pay us until we start making money together. And you're like,
Where do I sign,
great,
man?
what do I sign, baby? Okay. And then there's this little thing we learned about skin in the game. Like they're not quite the level of Brian Tracy, who's been around for years and a superstar. So like, hey, John, can you get us that content piece you promised? Oh yeah, sure. I'll get it to you in a couple of weeks. And yeah, but we need that now because we've been working our ass for it. Sure. Yeah, no problem. So it's kind of like a lot of when they didn't have skin in the game. You know, a lot of things we learned is they didn't have skin in the game. Typically, people would very much embellish the true value of what they have. You know, they talk about how great they were, how much everybody loved their content, and you know how they were rock stars, and they really didn't have much of a product. They didn't have much of an audience, and you know, for us to build that kind of product and audience is a monumental amount of work that we learned the hard way. So needless to say, we were taking profits and earnings from Brian Tracy, using staff to not tracking hours, any of that stuff. Yeah, that was so foreign to us back in the day. It was just like, hey, we got some money over here. Let's just start working on this new client. You know, let's start hiring, you know, some more people. And next thing you know, we're like, gee, this isn't really working out. We're not making much money over here. So it was discovery over the first few years of what is the right type of client to bring in, and how to get to monetization and from those clients. You know, then the next discovery as we climb is, gosh, we're doing a lot of work for people. And you look at the map, you look at where the hours are going, and this magical world of tracking hours. All of a sudden you start to open up your eyes and say, oh, wait a second, we're doing all this work and we're earning like 30, 40 bucks an hour on this client, and we're earning all this money on this other client. Something doesn't feel right here. You know, yeah, but it seems like we're going to get there. Like this performance is going to kick in at some point. We sure earn more in the future. Didn't work out that way. So we got caught a lot in the journey, and it was a big mountain to climb in the fact that I think some of the more difficult parts of the journey in the agency was you'd be stuck with a client that might be making you actually 15, 20 grand. But when you look at the hourly rate you're getting, it was so low. But if you wanted to just ditch the client, which could have been the smart move, you then have to lay off staff because you have the staff that 20 grand is going to pay for. So how do you get out of that hole? And that was a tough one. Some instances we just flat out have a difficult conversation with clients and said we got to raise rates and all that. But you know, ultimately we started to realize there was some flaws in our model, and that was kind of some changes we had to make.
So I had some similar. My idea was, yeah, we would start with performance based, kind of similar, and we did, right?
Yeah.
But I learned, like you, that there's some clients that are absolutely rock star, man. You can just take it to the moon. But there's so many of the others, the majority, that aren't. So it's very difficult, especially when you're selling like services, to make it work. I mean, at one point we actually got a percentage of a company's revenue as their outsourced marketing department. So we were literally getting 4.5% directly paid to us out of every dollar that came in. Oh, it was fantastic. But then we try this with other companies. Some of them play games. Some of them don't do what they're supposed to. So I literally abandoned that entire model because it's like betting on stocks, because this one's going to do great, but this one isn't. Well, the ones that aren't are way going to surpass any of the ones that can. And I've seen a couple companies that do it. And the only companies I've seen do it successfully are product-based companies. They can bet on a product where they take ownership of all the e-commerce. But other than that, it seems like it's just too speculative.
It's just right. Well, I'll tell you where we landed because we still actually integrate some of that model into our business, believe it or not. But there's a
I love
formula
this.
that we learned. We
Yeah.
learned the hard way, and also I'll jump ahead a little bit to where we are today and in that model. So yeah, you're looking at typical retainer, and as you said, people embellish how good they're going to be, how fast people are, how much the market loves their stuff. What are your numbers? And of course, what everybody does is takes their best month and multiplies by 12 and says, this is our run rate. this is how good we are. Or, our best month last month, and now we're just going to multiply it. And we should 3x it. And we got these 10 things that are happening, and it's just along the way, you just such stupid mistakes I made in the past of just jumping on it. And I think a lot of it is just, the insecurity, the confidence, that the lack of confidence as you're building, and there's a little bit of desperation when you're trying to add clients and you get so excited, and over time you just, it is, John, you get way more confident, you see the build up, you get to say no more, the leverage word comes in. It's nothing like leverage, right? Nothing like having a huge sales pipeline where you get to say no. And it takes a while to get there. So back to your question. So here's what we tell clients. We say we will go into performance with you, meaning we'll go all in and take a percentage of the net revenue. So we'll take your gross minus the cost of revenue, the net revenue, and we'll take a percentage of that. However, we don't start there. We have to date before we get married. What does that mean? Well, there's 4 things that need to happen in order for us. And so it's almost like us, how do we reverse engineer the formula? And there's at some point, there's a way it actually works. So what happens? So 4 things need to happen in what we learned. And it's the following 4. Number 1, do we actually like each other? It seems pretty obvious, but no, it's really important. And I use the variables such as, and you'll like this, John. When the client calls, do I get energy or I get drained just by seeing their number pop up on my cell phone?
Yeah.
Right? Like, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh,
shit, will I take their call on a Saturday? If I'm not willing to take their call on a Saturday, not somebody I want to.
When I go to dinner with my significant other and theirs, like, kind of thing, that number 1, can we get to that stage? Number 2, if no, then I don't want to go there with you. Number 2 is, do we really like the product? And it's not just me, Eric, as owner. It's my team. They got to be in there. I'm not going to be in the weeds doing the work. They're going to be doing the work. And can they brag about it? Are they excited about it? Does it make a positive impact, which is one of our missions, out there in the world? Number 3, do we know the true numbers of the business? And it's more than just, I know what the revenue is in business. No, I'm talking about like the KPIs, the movers, the movers, the big in the weeds, like what the conversion rates of the funnels are, all the drivers. Do we truly know the numbers of the business? And number 4, I know the numbers. I like the client. I like the product. When I look at the business as a whole, if we injected more resources, aka capital, into the business, could we scale it knowing we know about the numbers? So for example, let's say a client's paying us $25,000 a month and we're like, everything is rocking. You should be adding double the amount of services. We should be adding 30, 40 grand of services because there's so much potential here based on the ROI of the funnel. And the client says, I don't know, Eric, seems like a lot of money. All right, I'll tell you what, Mr. and Mrs. Client, stop paying me at all. We know the numbers of the business. Right now, you're paying us $25K. Well, if you look at the business and you reverse it, that's roughly about, would you agree that's roughly X to Y, 10 to 15% of the net revenue? Yes? Great. Okay, well, how about, we're going to take some risk here. How about you pay us 15 to 20%, we'll come up with some number, of the net revenue of the business, and we're going to double down and invest our own resources on it, but you're going to agree to pay 20% for our stake and risk. Sure, sounds like a good plan. Don't pay us any money. Pay us 0 now, not even 25, 0. Okay, great. That is now an educated gamble because I already know we're going to make that 25 back because I already know the percentages. I got 6 months, years worth of data that tells us my bottom, where my worst case scenario is. My upside is going to be really massive, and in a cool kind of way, I'm making more money from them. And fundamentally, back to what I said earlier in the call, in this conversation, the relationship switches. When they start writing me checks for 50 grand, it is way less painful because they don't think about, I'm writing 50 grand and where's my money going? They're just saying, damn, they made me this much profit. I'm now just paying them out of profits. I can justify paying my marketing and sales and tech team, a percentage of profits all day long.
So how do you have that? So like, what does that look like? the billing for that? Because that was always a nightmare, and there was like conversations, and it was like, what about this? Like, how clear? Like, what is your process for it?
When you say, I mean, we try to simplify it. So essentially, we would just, I mean, what we try to do is, I'd say where we've gotten the problems in the past when it's like, okay, well, these parts of the business,
Right.
you're not really doing much in, so we're going to strip that out. And the people on payment plans, it's nope, doesn't work. Tried it before, because like, what's to say that the thing we did on the website didn't have an impact on something else you did over
Force
here?
multipliers, like you got to go in with the whole thing. Okay, I agree.
So you kind of added sort of a version. I almost maybe I'll call it the fifth thing. I guess when we do the deal, we say it's really got to be out of the whole business. And then it just becomes simple, because then you just do a gross minus the COGS. COGS, that's the net revenue. I don't care about, it's not the profits, because they have all their operating expenses and salaries. We got our salaries. So we just take the net revenue and say, great, here's the net revenue. If we backdate the net revenue and look at the last 6 months, we've been earning 13%, 16%, 15%, whatever our money has been getting. It's pretty clear, Mr. and Mrs. Client, we're at a range of roughly 16, 20, 16, 17%. Just pay us 20% off the same number. And we're going to take risk.
And it goes over to their accounting, and then boom, next thing you know, you're getting paid. Got it.
Right. I mean, so instead of me now getting paid, net zero before the month, I may get paid 15 days later. But, and by the way, if they want to not pay me, that'd probably be a pretty poor move, considering by this point we've been working with each other for 6 months to a year, and we're in every part of your business. And that's the last thing you want to do is not pay the person who's got their hands on every part of your business.
Has that happened?
Never happened.
Good. Because it sounds like you're vetting them ahead of time based on your current process. So it's not easy for them to get to this stage with you.
That's correct. And there becomes the other question we've had, and we've done this 4 or 5 times. And the other question we've had is, well, what happens if the checks get so big? Would the client going to leave you and they're just going to do it themselves? And I've always said, I thought about that, and I said, you know what? There is such a big risk from a client. And again, think of you as an entrepreneur. How good does it feel that when you get a group of people that are doing a kick-ass job, how you can actually get yourself out of the weeds, let the team do their work, and do what you want to do? If you had, and the team's cranking, the last thing you want to do is replace that team and start over again to save a few dollars. Yeah, it's just too hard. It's too hard to find a team of A players that you trust, that is cares about your business and is looking at every dollar the way you'd look at it. That's very difficult to get. Ultimately, that's what our clients, partners would be getting, is a team that just generally cares. I mean, we own the business with them, so it's like they wouldn't touch it. And we've seen examples of the clients that we've had insanely big months, in big 6-figure checks coming our way. Didn't even blink an eye. We're your partner. Yeah.
And I think if they're smart enough, they're not going to separate, because that's a nightmare. Just there's way too many variables, way too many things that can go wrong, especially if it's a cash cow and everybody's performing. Right. But granted, of course, if you have a wide enough sample of people, you're going to find an idiot in there that thinks they're the exception, and they're going to be like, oh, well, we could save money. But man, my hat's off to you for you figuring that out and doing well at it. I know so many others that have failed.
Yeah, thanks. It comes from having made so many mistakes, and it's still not perfect. I mean, every deal is obviously unique, and we're learning and growing through it. And there'll probably be a few more iterations. It's almost like, back to what you said earlier, it's almost like we're investing as a VC, but we've been working and incubating the company for a while. So now when we make that gamble, we have a pretty good sense of what we're putting our money into.
Yeah. And that's the speculation standpoint. And then what about your other clients? So somebody doesn't fit into this model, turns out that they're a little bit creepy, and you think they're going to rip you off. Kind of joking there, but do you just say, all right, we're going to do hourly? Do you do value-based pricing? What does that look like?
Yeah. And you guys have some good conversation on that. I think we've been typically more value-based pricing. We'll kind of do some estimate of the hours we think it's going to be, and then come up with a proposal based on that. I think we might try a couple hours-based pricing on some clients that we might be sort of on the fence on, whether there might be a little bit of the PETA factor, also known as pain in the ass factor, as anybody who's not following along. But back to leverage, if we have a lot of people in the pipeline, we don't have to even take those on. But as agency life goes, there's up and down months. Sometimes you're in the point where you lost a couple or something happened and you need to take on an account.
What What's the highest
So
asshole text or PETA tax,
God.
whatever you want to call it? What's the highest that somebody actually paid for?
Oh man, I don't even know off the top of my head. I think when you say it's like probably chasing 20, 25 grand a month,
Wow, good for
you know,
you.
and you're just like, okay, it's enough that we're just dealing with it. Not happy about it. And part of it too, and this is, I think where that really becomes difficult, and what interesting to know what you do in this situation is you already know the client's done. Like something's happened, right? Let's just say they're not happy, and there's going to be a pointing finger, whose fault it is, and you and I would probably side on our own. You and I would probably come together and say, well, in most cases we know whose fault it probably is, but doesn't matter, right? Client's always right. It's what they think. So now
Not
we
our
know
mistake,
that
but now it's our problem.
it's
That's
our
a
problem,
great
right?
phrase.
That's right. We talk about on a side, we joke about client short-term memory syndrome, right? This is what they wanted when we talked. I got it on Zoom. I got a recording of it, but you changed your mind 3 times and didn't tell us. Yep, we're responsible for knowing. Okay, so the tough part becomes, client's probably not going to continue, even though they may dangle that carrot. And now you're into the next month. They're not paying you. Yet you need to unwind the situation. You're just burning clock. What do? There's a couple options. You can say, screw you, we've done our job, here's the recordings, we feel we've met it. Or you just bite the bullet and do it. Now, there's a big negative to doing that too. As you know, you're burning the team out. Nobody's motivated to work on it. You're essentially spending hours. You want to bring on new clients, but your team is spending hours on old client. So it's been a difficult road. The last thing you want is your company name, driven through the mud and/or the lawsuit thrown your way. So we've, for better or worse, unfortunately bit the bullet and typically do the hours, and it's been very difficult at times. You deal with those. I don't know. What do you typically do in those situations?
What we used to do is I would just charge like an insane amount, right? I can't remember what it was. I was thinking as you were talking, I was like, was it like an email newsletter? It was something that literally took like a couple hours, and the person was just intolerable. And we needed the money at the time, and I just threw out a number. I was going to be like 12,500. He's like 12,500. I was like, yeah, that's it. He's like, okay, done. Let's go. It's like, all right, cool, man.
Yeah.
So we did this small project, and it was like the biggest return we ever had. So it came out to like $6,200 an hour or something like that.
Got it.
Now I try to protect the team as much as possible, and just like, no, man, you're not a good fit. In fact, I had one of those calls today. Just it's
Well,
not
what I like that. What about the other scenario when you're working with the client, they're unhappy and they're not paying for another month's worth of work, and they want you to clean up the supposed mess that you made?
That's tough. Okay. All right. Fair enough. So I think in that case, if there's sometimes we could just split the baby, right? Saying, okay, it would be X. Let's just go ahead and this is how we got here. And that's where we use a phrase like, all right, look, this isn't our mistake, but it's our problem because you're not happy and we want to make you happy. So we'll go ahead and figure that out. But a lot of our plans now they're hour based. So if it's going in hours and we're tracking the project properly, we rarely get into that situation because on the upfront side, we're filtering them out. When I did value based, that's why I got away from it. I discovered we were continually there because they're valuing something different. It's like, okay, because at the end of the day, what are you valuing? You're valuing your profit. You're valuing your margin. And how do you track that best? It's hours, because that's how your employees are compensated. Whether you do it by a day, a week, a month, or whatever, that's how everybody gets paid right now.
Right.
So when we switch that over to hourly, all that for the most part went away. And granted, we'll get into certain little things like I'm not happy about this, and we'll fix it, because at the end of the day, we want to deliver. But I rarely, if ever, get into that situation. And in fact, I can't even think of one in like the last couple of years.
Yeah, I can totally see how that would make sense. And that's a very good reason for going that direction. I mean, I think, and not only that, if you are doing extra hours, there's true value. Like at some point they're like, okay, well, this many hours means I'm literally giving you, X thousands of dollars, and that has a true value to it when you're talking about dollars.
Yeah.
So, okay,
absolutely.
well, I'll put in this many, I'll give you $5,000 back, or, which is a lot, you'd say, I'm throwing a number out. But other than that, yeah, you're right, because they're following it, and you're saying, well, look, these are the hours we consulted to do. All right, well, if you feel like 5 hours are wasted, great, I'll knock your bill off by $500, which is a lot easier than chasing another 50 to 100 hours with the free work the next month.
Yeah, and you have to keep the client completely informed every step of the way because you're leading them to whatever that final product is. So you can't go from first base to third base. They just continually have to be communicated with. I think that's
Yep.
also another inherent piece of whether it is value or hourly. And yeah, 9 times out of 10, they're going to be happy. But granted, sometimes you're going to run into people that there's some terrible event going on in their life. They might be a high performer, a great person, and they might project and start beating up your team. But that's as good leaders, we can jump in there, humanize it, and usually diffuse those
Yep.
situations.
Yep. Yep. Love it. Love it.
Boom.
It's great.
All
Love
right.
it.
So you created Facebook before it was Facebook. Zuckerberg stole the idea from you via your brother at
Yeah.
MySpace.
Yep. Yep.
You've created a performance-based agency that focuses on essentially it's almost like in the self-help author part space, right? You say that's a specialty.
Yeah. Well, that I'd say now it's really we've played in B2B, B2C. Well, now we like to say it's really a combination of that, the thought leader influencer space, as well as direct to consumer. So we have a lot of B2C clients like skincare. We have a cool electric vehicle client, and a few others. So it's really just more the B2C side. And typically we do a lot of health and wealth as it turns out. So it could be health and wealth from authors and speakers, influencers. It could be health and wealth from products. What I like to tell clients when I'm sort of talking to them on a sales call is that the work we did on the info marketing author speakers, when you're trying to sell let's say a coaching product or a course of a $500, it's not like a widget you're selling on Instagram where it's an impulse buy. I need a skincare product. I look at the ad, I'm sold, boom, I buy it. In this case, you got to really nurture the lead quite a bit. Sometimes you're doing a ton of content marketing, a ton of SEO, video marketing. There's a lot of different triggers you got to go out there to capture the lead, nurture them through email marketing. Ultimately, they may buy 2, 3, 4, 5 months later. So taking that machine that we learned into that more difficult sale into the regular B2C has been kind of cool because when we integrate other elements like that into our normal marketing, we find it kind of fruitful and it's a little bit different than some other companies can offer. So to answer your question a long way, we just really focus on the B2C, mostly health and wealth combination, direct to consumer and author speaker.
You don't like the word self-help, do you?
Self-help could be. I think that's a part of it.
Yeah, okay.
I don't mind it.
It feels like when I said that, you're like, whoa, hold on. You're like, pump the brakes.
Yeah.
This is what we
pump
do.
the brakes. Yeah. It's bigger than that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. So where do you see that most agencies are going wrong? I know you're in EO. I mean, you're in DMG, some of these others. Like, what do you think that other agencies are doing wrong that they could do better based on what you've learned?
That's a good question. I hadn't thought about it too much. I think, I think it's just, you just think of what is some of the most difficult part of what we're doing. And I think it's being able to a fewfold. I think from the micro internal, it's the ability to really have the workflow and process and utilization down. And is my video frozen? If so, I can probably stop. Look like it was frozen for a second. There we go. I think it's getting the ability to get the workflow, the efficiencies within the team. So not only obviously tracking hours is tracking hours, but how do you ensure that you're using the right people at the right time, the right amount of hours, people are motivated within the workflow, and we're still working on this all the time. Otherwise, it's easy to get off the rails and be operating not necessarily profitably. I think from a more macro perspective, I think understanding how to build culture teams is extremely important. A lot of people I don't think do a great job of that. In our industry, as you know, retention of employees is so important and it's very difficult. And so to learn how to invest in that is as much as almost anything else is so critical. And if you don't, and you take it for granted, you're going to have a hard time retaining people. And I think people make that mistake as well. That's just extremely important. And I think,
how do you retain people? Yep. Like, talk about your culture, because from what I understand, it's pretty badass.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is yes, there's the fun element, and but it's not about like, hey, having ping pong tables. Although just getting people to the office would be a win at this point. It's now that we're in the remote world, our whole industry.
That's not an arcade. Yeah, we got all of them.
Yeah, we got all of them. That was the hot thing 5 years ago. No, I think a lot of it is you look and ask, what is it that the quote millennial or the younger, the next generation, what is it they really want? What gets them motivated? If you just stop to think, life is different than when, me being almost 50 when I was in work is a different world now, and if you can provide an environment what they want and what they want to learn, they want to grow, they want to feel like they're making a positive impact, they want to be trusted, they want to be heard, they just want a voice, and they want to feel like they can work on their own sort of in their time frame, but they'll get the job done if you give them those things and you trust them and you do those things. And then how do you create opportunities to have a little bit of fun built in, and so just doing a lot of that, and having we have fun nicknames too. We have like a fun Friday, which is once a month we do an offsite activity. One of my favorite things is just a tool, a feedback mechanism I get every week from my staff, where they get a chance to hear from me. And when I talk as a CEO, there's one thing where people just give feedback and hey, I'm a CEO, I get feedback, and people have a suggestion box. That's one thing. It's different when somebody says something and you pull it out of them, you extract it out of them, because man, I tell you, I mean, we're all ignorant if we think people are not fearful to come talk to us and tell us ideas. There's so much fear. Oh my God, the CEO, I don't know what they think of me. Is it my job? And if you could find ways to extract that and make that a positive experience for people that have ideas, good or bad, doesn't matter. Just show you're listening and give them feedback and the reasons why, and take the time to talk about their ideas. And
so are you getting anonymous feedback though?
Both. I think, I'd say less anonymous. I mean, every once in a while it's anonymous. Most of it's safe. They're just doing it.
Like, what's the worst thing somebody said to you, like anonymously? You're like, ooh.
There's things like, Eric doesn't listen enough. Like, I feel like he needs to pay more attention in meetings. Like he gets distracted. He'll be on his phone, and I realized as much as I want to, I have ADD and I want to multitask and I like doing that. It kind of told me that it reminded me as CEO, the spotlight's always on us. Like they're watching every move I make. They start talking, and if I'm not fully engaged in what they're saying, it's almost like a disappointment. Mm-hmm. And whether sometimes something they're saying is so not relevant to like where my head's at right now, and I got a million other things, it's that juggling act I got to play to ensure they feel like they're being heard. So I've gotten some of that feedback, which has been great. I got to pay more attention and give more feedback and more recognition. How do we give recognition as CEOs? And it's not just, hey, attaboy, attagirl, good job. It's, hey, great job for that thing you did over there and there and there. Now I'm paying attention, and I'm actually shows them that I know what they did. But I think it's recognition of that. I think, like you said, it's rewarding them for giving ideas and making them feel good about, wow, they were heard. Because when they do that and they have a good experience, guess what? They're going to do it again and tell their friends. Mm-hmm. Like, this is a company that really cares about me. They really take my ideas seriously. They're giving me a career path. That's the other thing. They want a career path. Like, here's your growth path. What do you want to be in 3 years? Oh, you're at 70 grand. You want to make 100 grand? Fantastic. Well, let me show you how you can get there. So just a lot of things like that.
That's good. No, I think that's fantastic. All right. Is there anything today that we didn't cover that the world should know?
The world should know. Well, I'll just say with my next mountain I'll climb. So we'll do it.
What's the next mountain?
Yeah. Well, the next mountain, I'll just say where I leave this at. It's interesting. It's how the world should know. As an entrepreneur, and it's something I'd get your opinion on. We talked about this before a little bit too. It's like, agency's cool. I like doing it, but I got more itches I need to scratch. I got another mountain I got to climb. So, but I love my agency. I love the team, right? So the next mountain, as we continue this mountain, is really that's it. It's not. We got to get the higher one. It's really the ability to incubate. We're making this money for other clients. We take in a client, they take their product, we sprinkle our magic sauce on it. Next thing you know, it grows. That's the idea. But why not do that for ourselves? And so I think the next journey is, how do we take either buy or acquire an existing thing that just needs some marketing juice to it that we own, or own at least more than 50%, or incubate our own ideas. And I think that's the next mountain to climb. And it'd be interesting with my other entrepreneurs or others that are out there. I'd love to hear kind of how they navigate this as agency owners too. And we have that itch we want to scratch. So I think that's next. And maybe we'll come back in the future and talk about that mountain, hopefully in a couple of years, a successful journey.
I love
there.
that. Already plugging episode 2 with Eric Berman. Yeah. So Dave and I actually did that. So we've looked at that. We've done it with one company, Jobs and Sports. So yeah, the idea there is you're betting on yourself, right? And then two, you'll have a portfolio of assets based on essentially your resources. So yeah,
That's right.
I agree with that. And yeah, definitely whatever that score is, whether it's win or lose, hopefully win. I'd love to have you back on where we can talk about that.
Yep. And I'll back to your other question. Thank you for that. I'll wrap up and say one of the things that I'll say, entrepreneurs love to be out there and all these things. I think having systems for staying organized is a tip that I would say is so critical.
What are your systems?
I mean, I try to keep inbox zero, which is shocking in the way I like to do. And the way I'm able to do that,
infinity.
the way I'm able to do that is by creating systems. And first, I say it starts with putting folders together. You got to have places where you're going to take your email and fold. I call it the RAD system, RADD. Okay, so first you have your folders. You got to set up with your folders. Meaning, what does that mean, folders? Well, folders could be like stuff to read, trash, personal real estate, personal, whatever. It could be client folders. It could be department folders. You need a place to deposit your mail. Okay, mail comes in, RAD system, RADD. And after you do everything, you put it in a folder. So R is reply. Okay, you just reply. It's done, and now I'm done. Get it out of your inbox. You don't need it there anymore. Okay. A, you can go delete or A is assign, or like we say, assign or Asana since we're on Asana. So okay, I got a task, and I can assign it to myself. I can assign it to somebody else out of my email. D is delegate. Again, same thing. I don't need this. I forward it to somebody else. Okay, can you please respond to this? And then second D is delete. Don't need it. It's junk. But trying to remove all of that clutter out of there allows me to stay really on top of what's going on and be very responsive. I feel like things don't get lost. And then other than that, using to-do lists pretty relentlessly, not only a work to-do list, but a personal to-do list, and allowing that to help me manage my day. I will actually, at the end of every day, I will look at tomorrow's to-do list. And I'll make sure I clean up every to-do from today and move it off to either tomorrow or to a future date. I then look at my calendar for tomorrow and say, well, how much free time do I really have? I only have 1 hour of free time. Okay, well, great. I'm not going to be able to do 50 tasks. Then I look at my task for tomorrow and I say, okay, do I need to reassign it to another date or do I keep it for tomorrow? So now all of a sudden today shows up, the next morning walks in, and I'm not walking into a pile of 50 to-dos. I'm walking into 8 or 9 things that I have to do, because realistically, I only have an hour. So I spend that 5 to 10 minutes before my day ends, prepping myself for the next day. And what it allows me to do is stay in control amongst the chaos. It allows me to stay motivated and control. I'm not stressed, because I feel like stress is equal to a lack of control. When you don't have control, you get stressed. I'm in control of my day. I don't let the day control me. Same thing with the personal. All my personal to-dos. I don't forget things. I get so much accomplished because I have a mechanism for keeping it. And I'm talking about things like remember to water your plants outside on a Sunday, or take the trash out. Like nothing escapes, or buy that gift for your father-in-law. There's like how to remember so many things. But if you have an ability to take an idea and instantly write it down or put it somewhere, it's not taking your mind share. It's off into the system, and the system brings it up when it needs to bring it up. So that's some tools I have for the busy executives running around doing too many things.
I love that, man. Yeah, So I have infinite inbox. Like there's certain things like it's priority. It happens. If not, just now. And it just is what it is. And I've tried the zero. And I applaud you for it. That's great. I've even had assistants in there, and I still couldn't figure that out. I've graduated it off and just realized like it's not a part of my DNA. It doesn't bother me. But calendaring is huge for me. So it sounds like that is for you as well. So I literally look at like, okay, something that has to be done is time. Okay, well, that time has to live somewhere, whether it's a task or anything. So I don't have task lists or anything like that. Everything just goes onto my calendar.
Nice. Well, that's a good system too. I've seen that work as well. So I think that works as well. But the point is, you have a good system, and that's key. Either way, there's a lot of people who don't have a system.
For you, right? And works for everybody else. So I love your tips. Yours seems like even more advanced than mine. I could probably steal some from it. And you're frozen.
Yeah, we'll talk offline a little bit more on that. And I'm frozen. There we go. I'm back.
All right. You know, I think it's funny. You're like, oh man, you're talking about your ADD, and you're like, how long are we going to talk for? I mean, it's
58 minutes.
Yeah, perfect. All right. So, how can people get a hold of you?
Branditize.com. That's brand ETIZE, as in like brand and monetize put together. So Branditize. I also have my own sort of personal website, ericberman.com, which has like links to all my social and all that fun stuff.
Awesome, man. Well, this is such a pleasure, man. I appreciate you joining us.
All right. Thanks for having me. Good talking to you.
Likewise. Hope you enjoyed our episode. Please subscribe and review wherever you can. And if you would like to join the Digital Mastermind, go ahead and shoot me an email at jon@digitalmastermind.com or visit us at digitalmastermind.com. We'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye now.